shelter. Simple life, it's all we want to live. Give me food, give me clothes, give me love, and give me shelter. Yeah.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the We To Our Librarians Movement podcast. Tonight, as you all know, our podcast is to speak to and for the masses. We are not in the business of manufacturing players, pimps, and hustlers, we say, but we're in the business of changing and revolutionizing the thought process of our people, not only in Liberia, but even around the world. Tonight, as you all know, I have with me in studio no other but the one and only Mr. Gebah S. Kamara. Gebah, welcome to the show tonight. I guess you have a few words to say just before we get into our topic.
Yeah, thank you, Ayiti. It's a pleasure again joining you. Been a little while, but I'm always glad to be here as we dive deep into this topic for the night. Just wanted to give a quick, background when it comes to this topic that we, diving into. I do have over, 10 to 15 years in, behavioral health, mental health, drug addictions. My recent last position before this, I was a clinical mental health counselor, supervising, over 5 case manager, with each carrying caseload of over 38. And most of our clients, at individual diagnosed with drugs addiction or some level of mental health issue. So when it comes to this topic, I just want to make it clear that, that it interests me. And I do have a lot of interest in it because, I was deeply depressed when I went to Liberia and saw that the very clientele that I'm dealing with in America trying to help, the same were in Liberia at the same time, at the time, like relatable situation, the drugs addiction, the mental health. So that I could vividly see my client in America, in the individual that I saw in Liberia. And that really touched my heart, really broke me down. And I came over, and decided to do something about it. But we will go more, into this conversation as we dive deeper. But again, I just want to say, thank you for bringing this topic alive. It's a very important topic for our country. I know there's a lot more other stuff that we are constantly confronted with that we seem to focus more on and forget about this major and devastating problems that is right now confronting Liberians, and we need to do something about it. So thanks for shining light on it, and look forward to discussing more detail.
Gebah, I want to thank you again for being on the podcast tonight. You bring a lot, to the table. As always, it's never a dull moment when you're here, and it's great to share time and space to talk about issues that are confronting our country, Liberia. For tonight's show, as you all know, again we have in the podcast with us Mr. Gebah S. Kamara, who just openly give us a little background about himself as far as issues related to our topic tonight. His background working with individual in the behavioral health science area and some other area, drug addiction, things like that. So for our topic tonight, topic is simple: why you must say no to drugs. It would not only kill you, but also destroy the future of our unborn babies, all the unborn babies. So I want to start tonight by saying, there's a quote from, what's his name, Frederick Douglass, who once said, he said, "It is much more easier to raise strong children than to repair broken men." That's from Frederick Douglass. So we want to say good evening tonight Welcome to the We Too Liberians Movement podcast, where truth confronts power and silence is broken by purpose. So last week I spoke from the heart, from a place of pain and urgency. Tonight, the voice of two strong individuals. We said that grow stronger because we are not alone. We feel, and that's why we are here. So I'll just say, joining me tonight again, uh, if you'll note, is Mr. Jiba Kamara. So Jiba, again, like I said, it's always a pleasure to be here. The drug epidemic in Liberia. One of the reasons why I thought we should talk about this. August 7th, we had a mass turnout in Liberia under the team, under the banner, say no to drugs. But I thought for a fact that a lot of these awareness or camping awareness at stage, even with protest, a lot of our people don't even really understand the urgency. And I thought that beyond just saying no to drug, why are we saying no to drug is pretty important. And that's truthfully the ultimate purpose of tonight's conversation. Because the truth is, the drug is killing not only the drug user, but it's also affecting, we can say, will to a large extent affect babies, the unborn babies, because those who are involved with this drug use and the drug addiction, drug abuse, some of them are being impregnated, they're having children. And we know what's going to happen. These children will be affected by the drug also. And then so sooner or later we'll start having drug babies all over the place. So again, tonight's team is raw, it's real, and it's necessary. Not only with this drug kill, you, but it will also destroy the future of our children. So, Jibat, let's take a deep dive. You've seen the damage firsthand, like you said. How are drug reshaping the soul of this nation? What would be your take on that?
I think before we even go into why what drugs does to the human being or to the human bodies, or why are they taking drugs? I think we should pretty much go into the genesis of this. Let's figure out why. Let's go to the why. Why are they doing this? Why do they see the need before we talk about the effects of it? Because it does affect, any soul, any living being taking these chemical substance, these illegal substance, definitely going to have a toll on you. Liberia faced, significant challenges over the past, several decades, with the long-lasting effect of, the Liberian Civil War from 1989 up to 2003, this continued to impact the population, particularly women, right? And young men. The Civil War left a profound, legacy of trauma, exacerbating, baiting mental health issue among women who were often left, to bear the burdens of, the families, emotional and economic and physical well-beings. A lot of men died during the Civil War. A lot of men left, and we know the mothers were always there carrying the load, whether it was economic burden, whether it was physical burden, whether it was emotional burden from the loss of a loved one or someone being murdered right in front of them or their own family member, So all of this, combined, all of these trauma, right? It brought a physical toll on different segment of the Liberian population, whether it was from these young kids who were left to be raised by single mothers who themselves were traumatized from the war, right? All of those things have an effect. And drugs become a gateway to release those stress, a gateway to release, the emotional stress and psychological and mental, or deprivation that individual may be facing at the time. They look for an outlet, So drugs become an outlet to suppress those emotional, psychological, feeling at the time. So these young kids watch their mothers doing it, or watch men coming around their mom doing it. So they themselves picked up from there. And you see, out of that, the population of drugs user just continues, continue to grow. So I think we should address how this whole thing started. Because when we really talk about drugs, we know for sure, for those of us that lived the Liberian Civil War, that many young people were intoxicated or were fed drugs of all kinds of different, sustenance to make them brave, to give them the ability to go to fight without even thinking about the fear of death. So drugs were introduced significantly in the Liberian society during the Liberian Civil War by the various warring factions. So since then, it had not left. It had just continued to exacerbate and increase. And of course, other role actors have taken advantage of that and seeing it as a lucrative business. So I think, before we even go to, the danger of drugs, let's talk about why is it prevalent in the Liberian society. Then I think we can find a leeway to figure out, okay, how do we address those things?
Perfect. And I think Jiba, I like what you just articulated. I think I did a short, and the question was asked why you must say no to drugs. And I started going back. I had this conversation with normally when I host a live, regular Blue App live in the show. I have a brother. I think he follows the show, and he comes back. He critiques the show, and we go back and forth. And sometimes we come to a common ground. And I think it's important that you brought that up because I was going back to the genesis. Because at the end of the day, I want these kids to really understand how this started. And for me, I took it far back, Jiba, how some group of people. This is a strategy to keep a certain group of people down. It's a strategy to marginalize a certain group of people. But for the purpose of Liberia, I know we're talking, he said, so why do you want to use that? I think it's too far behind. But sometimes, the platform is here to educate, to cultivate, and to empower. So if we begin to really give our viewers, especially the young folks, and even the old alike, the actual the fundamentals about why these things, what's the strategy, why it was thrown our way, the intent, talking about an indictment, things like that, because I don't want to go that far. I mean, I think you saw I talk about the transatlantic slave trade, how people were suppressed, they were given their freedom or whatever. You have Liberia there. Let's look at the entire continent. So the goal now is for one group of people to keep a certain group of people down. So you have to use these substances. So if we look at the issue of drug is not only unique to Liberia, it's not only unique to Africa, is not only a continental issue, but a global issue. But with the bringing it into context for Liberia, we can see the influence of drug. We can take it back to the same thing that I'm talking about. Even before the Civil War, people sold drugs in Liberia, but it was not as prevalent, And another friend of mine was talking about where he lived at the time, the house that he lived in. People had drugs, and those drugs were being brought into the country and accompanied by even the very military. So see, people, like you use the word lucrative, and people did. And they're still doing it because they see the profit. And now this profit that they're getting is all about these material trappings to build their houses, to have money in their pocket and things like that. But what's happening to the user or the end user? Because you have these people that are there enriching themselves. We can take this thing farther. If someone will ask the question, Jiva, if you say we should go to, because it's almost like we're trying to address the source. Who is responsible? You know what I'm saying? After you've said all of what you said, who's responsible for the drug? Who's producing the drug? Who's manufacturing it? Before it is sent down to be dispensed and distributed, to these various ghettos or drug pockets, in the country. So maybe it's something that the fact that you're asking that question to see how can we address this, because this is something that is systemic. There was a strategy to keep a certain group of people down. We ourselves don't even know. People who are indulging into the drug sale, now they're using this as a form of business to reach themselves. I don't want to divert, but I just want to throw that in to say, yes, if we're going to go back to the source, then we must get down to the history of how this thing came about and how it spread on to the continent, then slip into Liberia. But for the purpose of Liberia, maybe you just wanted to, what's your take on that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is a historical, connotation to everything, especially when it comes to drugs. You start right here in America, we know the difference between certain drugs that's permissible in certain circle, which is not treated as criminal, but then certain drugs in certain circle, which also does the same thing, is treated harshly. So we know that disparity is always there when it comes to, punitive measure for drugs use, right? Like, for example, in America, cocaine have a much more lighter sentence compared to crack cocaine. But crack is made of white sustaining cocaine powder itself. The difference is there's a baking powder that is used in crack to make it solid, to break it, because Black people couldn't afford, the cost of a really, raw powder cocaine. So they strategize, okay, I can buy arms and bring it, add some baking powder and spray it around and make more money out of it. But because the movement Black folks were taking that became a concern to the American government. But the white powder cocaine was used by affluent, rich, white, and affluent people. So you get 5 years, you get 2 years for crack for powder cocaine, which is the most potent part of it. And then get 5 years or more for the more breaking, the breakdown part of it. So there's always been disparity in, administering, laws that govern drugs, and we can throw the blame everywhere. Who's responsible to bring that into certain community? Here in America, we know the history that, the FBI, implanted drugs in many community here in order to have a reason to be present in those communities. So, now we go back to, we go back to the continent, or we focus on Liberia per se, we can also say similar thing. You have individuals who plant these drugs in this community for the very reason. As for Liberia, it's not about, who get more punishment. I think for Liberia, individuals who planting drugs in this community are doing it for, for financial gain or financial reason. But I'll always go back to, the Civil War itself. The Civil War, left a devastating effect on the Liberian population, particularly women and children who were, disproportionately, affected, by violence, sexual abuse, displacement, many witnesses and experience atrocity, that left them in deep emotional scar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Including, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, depression, anxiety, So all these things create a pathway towards drugs addiction. Because again, most time people use drugs, it's an outlet. It's an outlet to escape the world that they live in right now at that time. Even though it's just a temporary fix, but at least they experience, the escape from that particular feeling at the time. So we can't forget that part. Yes, there were drugs in Liberia long before the Liberian Civil War, but it was not, it was not at this kind of scale. And with the effect of it was not visible to many of us when we were growing up. The most drug that you and I know of, mostly was marijuana. Right. Honestly, right. Marijuana. True. All the other stuff was things that was way out there that we didn't really see. People would tell you, but now it's visible. Whether it's on social media, you can see the effect of the drugs on these young people. When I visited Liberia, we visited a few grave sites. You find individuals going into a graveyard and removing the coffin of a dead person and sleeping in there. Dude, I don't know if it's just drugs, but to me, that's definitely mental health combined with drugs addiction, everything together. So it's a bigger problem. Now, if you ask me who's responsible, I would say Liberian government is responsible. Liberian government is responsible for the infiltration.
So why would you say that the government is responsible for it?
Huh?
Why would you say that the government is responsible?
Because it's a very good question, right? Yeah. So right now, despite all of the situation that I told you about regards to the population, the effects of the Civil War on the population of Liberia, the devastating effects of the post PTSD, right? Anxiety, displacement, abuse, trauma of war. All of those things happen, right, in Liberia. We have different substantive government that have come in place. And there had not been any major effort on the part of these, Liberian government, right, to tackle these problems. Liberia lacks significant infrastructure to provide mental health support to those in need. The lingering trauma from the Civil War has not only affected, women and children, but I would say the entire country. Right? As a result of drugs use, as a result of mental health, as a result of war trauma, right? It's continuing to perpetuate a cycle of poverty, limiting opportunity for education, right? Employment and self sufficiency. So what effort can you or anyone tell me that the Liberian government have really focused on this rather than apart from arresting, individuals who are using the drugs, right? Do we have a comprehensive mental health treatment program in Liberia? Do we have a comprehensive drug treatment program in Liberia? These are things should be provided by the government, because we don't have no private entity over there to really provide these services. And if you even do have a private entity to provide these services, that means the citizen has to pay for these services. And the citizen lack the financial means to do so. We cannot only depend on NGOs. We now know that, that mindset of relationship that we have had with NGOs in the past can no longer be a sustainable relationship, because different government will come in or different president will come in and change the rules and don't want those support to come again. So then what happened? You left dry. So when I tell you that the government is responsible, the government need to take priority in these things. It need to be a concentrated effort, like they do with every other thing. This is because this is a big problem.
It is.
Right? You damaging the future generation of this country. You're damaging the current generation of this country. You're losing your manpower skill to drug addiction, right? To maybe early death, overdose, and other thing that comes out of that. So government need to have a concentrated effort where resources are allocated, where mental health clinicians are trained, drugs counselors are trained, where we have doctors, right, that are trained in identifying and providing the necessary treatment for these things, where compulsory treatment is provided for individual, deemed addicted to drugs or deemed to have some level of mental health, or trauma, whether it be it from the war or be it post-war or whatever the situation is. We need to have that concentrated effort. And I don't see it on the part of the government yet. So until then, we have to put the blame on the government. And then you talk about the enforcement part of the drug. How's the drugs coming into the country? Who is responsible to protect our borders, airport, and seaport? It's the government, right? So under their watchful eyes, we still seeing drugs coming into the country at a prolific level. So who can we blame? The people that are using it? No.
You're 100% right. And we have a health ministry in Liberia. And when I was in Liberia last year, they were talking about new psychiatric home or whatever, but I never heard them talking about like a drug addiction rehabilitation facility. And also, now we're talking about government, and we have a senator in the government who has, I don't know if that particular facility is his. You talk about professional who are to be, or individuals to be trained professionally so they'll be able to deal with these issues. And if the government is not making any effort, even if private entities go there to try to do it. And one of the reason why I really agree with you is because the Constitution of the country itself says one of the sole purpose, I would say maybe two, is to educate and to protect the well-being of the citizens. And we can see that the government is falling far behind that, because the issue of drug now has become not it's not a crime, because I know a lot of these people, you're talking about where the drug coming from. People that are the drug users are the ones that are being affected, especially in these small ghettos. And when they grab these guys, they lock them up, or you have to hands the release. So I want us, having said all of that, it's totally strong, 100%. I agree with almost all the things that you're saying. I can say I concur with you. So I want us to get to the soul of the matter. So we can begin to ask some questions that the politicians themselves avoid. The elite would dismiss. And the reason why I say so, we just had an officer, I think maybe Sacramento Command, I stand to be corrected, whose daughter was caught with drugs, was arrested. And why she was arrested, I think the dad got noticed, and then when he called, he was asking for her release. So the question that I want to ask, because everything that you said, you 100% on point. This is something that I think the government is aware of. When the resources that this government has, the government spending $45,000, every 3 years or whatever, on one representative to get a car, and then spending representative senator, they're getting paid $15,000, some $30,000, all that kind of stuff. When you have the very youth who's supposed to be the future leaders, they've been diminished, they've been reduced, they're destitute, and these are all of the factors that are responsible for the youth being at the point that the borders are not protected. So we got all that going on. But the question that I want to ask you now, who actually benefits when the future of the nation lies in a quarter with a needle in his arm or powder on her tongue? So who's benefiting?
Yeah,
Because if it's not the government response, so who's benefiting from it?
Nobody benefiting from that stuff. Nobody benefiting from that. I mean, it's sad. It's sad just from that, description you gave. And that is the reality, on the ground. You see these things. I mean, I saw during my visit, behavior exhibited by a drugs dealer, by a drugs addict here in Kensington being exhibited on the street of Monrovia in Liberia. I was like shocked. But in America, they have the resources for it, right? Most of these Western countries, like you said earlier on, the problem of drugs addiction is not an African problem or, particular to Liberia itself. Even here in America, there have been billions and billions and billions of dollars being spent on, on countertailing, the use of drugs. Of course, that have been in many failed attempts, However, the resources stay there. The government doesn't give up. You have private entities that fight, that is in the fight. You have institutions that are in the fight. You have research centers that's in the fight. We don't have those kind of resources. We don't have anything close to what these people. Imagine the people with all the resources. Yes, they having problems.
But you might want to
have a problem managing it. So imagine, right? Imagine a country like Liberia with no resources. So the question is, who benefit? Nobody benefit. Not even the drug dealer benefit from it. They might think that the short gain that he or she may, make at that time,
right,
is good for them. It's good for business. It's truly not good for business. Because sooner or later, you're not going to have anyone around to buy that drugs again. Because you don't finish, poisoning everybody else. You don't finish killing everybody else. You're finish mentally destroying everyone else. Who's your clientele now? Who's going to be your customers?
But Jiba, somebody will come back and say, "Oh no, Jiba, it's true. Not the mothers, not someone who." Most often the petty users and the end users are not the ones, or they're not benefiting. But then the guy, not the street, consumer and things like that, street boys, but those who import the drug, they will protect it and they'll politicize it. So because of the profit that they're making, wouldn't you say that they? I know you made a salient point, a brilliant point, because everything that they're doing is temporary. It's temporary. Do you think the gain is not sustainable? But so don't you think that someone can say that way they're profiting?
Obviously you can consider it as profit, as profiting from it, but to the benefit of what? For short term ride. Short term, pleasure. Short term. Whatever else that they may be, pursuing. I'm not sure what the end goal is, but then definitely becoming millionaire in Liberia for selling drugs, so it's chicken change. But that chicken change is destroying, devastating effects. So if they could only think about, the devastating effect and the long-lasting effect that it has on the country image as a whole, and in natural resources, right? Because the human capital is being depleted. The human capital, for those that survive the addiction, they're probably mentally not stable, right? because drugs do all kinds of stuff to you. It impair your judgment, right? So you leaving all of these individuals in this country only because you're getting a short-term, profit gain to accommodate whatever you having in mind. I mean, I really don't see the profit making part of this whole thing, honestly. You may make few Liberian dollar and think that's it. It's really nothing. Honestly, you're not going to get rich selling drugs in Liberia. You're just destroying the country. You're supporting and helping to, degenerate the country. Yeah, maybe that's your profit. Then maybe, but it's not wealth.
I like exactly how you're looking at it, and I hope because the purpose again for the show is to enlighten the people. So even those who are involved with the sales and the distribution of the drugs, if they can see it from that perspective, because at the end of the day, we have a demographic that you're impacting. So you're killing all these kids and you're killing them born babies. So who's there for the future? How do you the trappings, the material trappings that you're trying to acquire? How does it really benefit you? How does it benefit? So I like that, and I hope people are listening. They can see it from that perspective, because the truth, the reason why I'm asking this question is just to provoke some and evoke something, so that people who out there who watch the show say, yeah, but it makes sense. This is similarly almost with us, who most time will come, we opportune, grab, a little money, and we go there. The only thing you think about yourself. Build a house in the fence. You win the bar ad, and you got your car. But what happened to the people next door? So it's the same thing, because the infiltration of drug in the country is diminishing our youth, is destroying the future of our children, and sooner or later, who will be there now to continue the legacy of the good ones? But then the impact that it's making too, because the people, even the people who, if you're elite, if your children see you doing drug, eventually they might indulge into the same thing, and so we'll start having that vicious cycle. So the quality of people that we're making, we're not really making people that will be there to hold the country up, so that we can have a society that is more sustainable. So I 100%, I just want to add that, what you're saying is 100%. And that would take me to another question I want to ask you. How did drugs actually flood our streets so easily when we have the LDEA? They're talking about this government, not to politicize anything, said keen to rescue the people. And why has no one in high places been held accountable?
But I mean, the Liberia problem has always been, lack of sincerity on the part of government officials, lack of patriotic people, lack of honest people. We keep focusing on imaginary demons that doesn't exist. They only exist in the Bible and the Quran. The demons among us are the politicians and the representatives that we elect, because their action is demonic. Their action is demonic. Their action is demonic in the sense that their acts of corruption, it destroys a country sense of belonging, sense of hope, sense of just literally everything. Out of corruption, the possibility of a school is destroyed. The possibility for food is destroyed. The possibility for self-sustainability is destroyed. The possibility for of healthcare is destroyed. All of those things. So infrastructure, they're all destroyed because of corruption. If that is now your biggest demon that you should be afraid of and worry about this imaginary demon that doesn't exist, only in the Bible and the Quran, then that's where Africa problem lies. That's where Liberia problem lies, right? Because we should be focusing on these individuals that we elect and bring into power, because these are the individuals who perpetrate the importation of these drugs into the system. You talk about whatever, Liberia, drugs enforcement agency and all that. I mean, for every institution, there's definitely going to be corruption there, anywhere in the world. But the reason why you have laws and order, the reason why you have rules, the reason why you have penalties, the reason why you have punishment, so that you can set an example for anyone who want to exhibit or engage in such an act, will often have something to reflect on, right? But when you have a land of impunity, then everyone else will continue to do the same thing with no reason do. Because for crime to happen, the few things need to be in place. You have to have the opportunity and you have to have the will, right? The opportunity and the will must exist. You can have the opportunity to commit a crime, right? But you don't have the will, you won't. You can be a banker all day, you play with the money. But you don't have that will, you're not going to take that money. But you're a banker, you have the will. Now you got an opportunity because all of those, you have access to those. It make it easy for you to do. So you got these people who are roaming our street that's supposed to be our law enforcer. They have the desire and they have the will and the opportunity, come together, right? For them to perpetrate, acts of criminality wearing the uniform. The uniform is just there to protect them, right? It serves as a metal shield for them. Their position, be it the minister, be it the assistant, be it the director, all that. All of those things are just protective gear for them. The individual, most of them are not honest human beings. These are social hustlers who are only in there to hustle for themselves for the wrong short-term gain, because they go with the mindset that, I'm only there for this government. The next government that come, they're going to bring their own people. So therefore, he's not waiting to plant any tree for the next person to eat from that tree. That's the mindset of Liberia. That is what is killing our people. That is what is killing that country, because you have individuals who don't have no long-term goal. Their goal is just the short term, always. What can I get in this government? Because the next government comes, I won't be there. Because they're not prepared to be in the next government. Maybe they got their buddies and friends who in this government to hire them. So the next guy comes, he got his buddies and friends. So there's no commitment to anything. There's no commitment to the country. There's no commitment to the society. There's no commitment to the people. The commitment is to them. What can they get within that short time that they're serving the next 4 years or 5 years in whatever government that they're in? Until we can break that circle, you're going to have these kind of questions. Who's bringing the drugs there? When we have all of these people patrolling around claiming to be drug enforcement officers and Minister of Justice or whatever else you want to call them, But I mean, a lot of these guys have the commitment to the country. There's no loyalty to the country, and we know that.
And G man, I like the way you put it. Man, I know you talk earlier on. You talk about patriotism and love for country and things of that nature, and that's something that we have not seen. And a lot of the shorts and other podcasts that I'm on, that I will do by myself. Those are some of the things that, I really kind of lay heavy emphasis. And it is true, because just to answer the same question that I asked you about why has no one in high places been held, the kind of only thing you lay out, and that's $1 million question, because the ports don't open themselves. Continue, don't walk off the ship by itself. So they're actually big hands, greasing system, keeping this rock alive. And so until we can get to, but how can you even get to that when, in fact, the LDEA, these people are walking around masquerading, acting as though they're working, but they're not there for the people. They're not there for the common good of the country, to see the country, be lifted from the pit. So it's a fact. And so I think, we really need to get to the bottom of this. But in order for this to be corrected, there's something more that needs to be done, because the talking cannot solve this problem. Maybe there's somebody that will has to come from within, who will rise to the position, to the rank, to say, it has to be done. But if we have the same people in the system, people who are greedy, who are there for themselves, who are not concerned about the future of the people that are going to come after this particular thing. Can you imagine a child of the slum dies from overdose? Then you have another child of the elite who finds himself in the same situation. But in the event that the other child who dies from the overdose, normally lay in the gutter, he stays there. The child of the elite, they're flying out. If he's overdosed, they're flying out for rehabilitation. So where's the justice? You just talk about, where's the justice? Because one got money, he's able to fly his child up there, but the other cannot afford it. The parents are not, they're not in the position, so that kid leaves, is left down there to die or to suffer in pain and agony. So that's the kind of country that we find ourselves. And I think for those of you who have experience, there has to be ways, there has to be some means, some strategy. What would be your take on what can, a guy like you with a background in that area that's aligned with drug addiction, things like that, what would you recommend?
I mean, I think there's a lot more. I keep going back to, mental health, because it is, it is the triggering point of all of this, right? Be it alcohol, be it drugs. It has to come from that mood in your mind where you're feeling at that time, right? Whether it be a depression, mental health services are severely underdeveloped in Liberia. There are few trained, counselors or therapists or, mental health professionals available to address, the growing mental health, crisis in that country, right? Particularly in rural area. We don't even talk about rural area. We talk about Monrovia, but drugs is in all those other areas too, in the rural area. According to the World Health Organization, Liberia has one psychiatrist per 1 million people.
Jesus.
One per 1 million. I mean, think about it. Highlighting the country critical need for mental health, professional, So for most of these people that we're talking about, be it women, be it, the young individual, they have no access to counseling services. In many parts of Liberia, mental health issues are considered taboo. People don't talk about those things because they're considered taboo. It's a cultural stigma. You get isolated from people when you're talking about mental health stuff. You talking crazy stuff, you get isolated. So most of these people cannot talk about what they're experiencing. So the outlet will be drugs, because that will help to suppress that feeling that they're trying to escape from. That trauma they're trying to escape from. There's a lot of things happening with our young daughters and sisters and cousins, right? Whether it be a family, family to family rape, that goes on. People keep these things silent. It happens on both sides, not just girls, boys too, who keep it silent. But these young people are struggling with that trauma. There's no outlet. There's no outlet to go and deal with these things. So how do they deal with it? The bottle, which is the alcohol or the drugs, the marijuana, or whatever else that is available at that time, where they feed themselves invisible, where they feed themselves aligned, where they suppress these things. But those feelings are temporary. It come back. And once those feelings come back, you go again for more because, it's helping to help you escape that reality that you're so scared to confront. And the more you go to treat that, the more addicted you become. And here you are, you're a full-grown addict. So for me, again, it bowed down to the government itself, really understanding that it's a crisis. Not just putting people on the street or demonstrating no to drugs. Listen, man, we had the DARE program in America here, say no to tobacco, to nicotine. Billions of dollars were spent on that. It only made more young people to smoke. So we know that often, doesn't work. So yeah, it is okay for the women to, run the street of Monrovia, advocating for, say no to drugs, but that is not the solution. The government itself need to have a concentrated, focused effort towards this, where they need to have the necessary institutions established, train staff, get staff from overseas if the need be. We have a lot of Liberian trained in mental health, issue. We have a lot of Liberian trained in drugs and addiction and rehabilitation. So all of those things, here comes the power of your diaspora. If you are a progressive nation waiting to tap into those resources, you have them. You don't need to bring another white man to come and do that for you. Mm-hmm. Bring your own people who actually live here and know the system, know the culture, know the society. But if the focus is not on those things, then we're not getting anywhere with it. But it cannot be an individual. No individual can solve that problem. And no NGO by itself can solve that problem. It has to be a government initiated.
That was great. That was a great response, Jivat. And that something that I'm struggling with now, because after this mass gathering awareness campaign, against drug addiction, I guess the organizers who I want to extend commendation to, I believe they met with the government. It's funny because during that campaign or the awareness campaign, I saw people, the government officials were marching alongside the, those who were in attendance. Mm-hmm. And I think they did a big presentation and things like that. But just like you said, after all of this, what next? What's happening?
Yeah.
August 7th. Now today is August 27th. So was this just something that people went out there, they mimicking? You just said no, that people have these things. Was it really intentional? I mean, are we doing it because it's at my doorstep? Because a lot of times when these things are happening, until it's affecting you, or now it starts to affect me, I don't care.
Yeah, no. That's what happened right here in America.
Yes.
When the drugs addiction became a serious problem, where the government really started heavily investing rather than locking up brown and black people. When their kids started getting affected by it on a serious note, that's when a lot of resources went to rehabilitation programs because it was affecting them there. It was right at their doorsteps. So, for me with Liberia, what I would like to see, if the government is really serious, all these individuals who were parading, the street with these women for a photo op, let them prove it to me. Start with building the first homeless shelter in Liberia. Start with that first. The homeless shelter. Most of these guys got 10, 15 buildings, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have one homeless shelter in the country. One homeless shelter where individual goes in, instead of sleeping in the graveyards, instead of sleeping in tombs or in caves, can go at the end of the day. They can go there, get a fresh shower, get food to eat, and lay down where you can have counselor to even just start the conversation with them about drug addiction, about the choices they're making. That is the first step, because that's how you start. If you're not even thinking about that, you're not even towards that path. All the other thing you're talking about is just all photo op. It's just all talk, like Brim may say,
Mimicry.
to give them more media time or focus. And as soon as the camera goes away, it's all over. They will make pledges that they don't follow up. But just do that. I think the other day I was telling you about the Marshall hurricane of need, right? Providing the shelter, providing food, right? Just those two little basic things. Just do that. Again, don't tell me the resources is not there, because half of those minister representatives most of them got over 5, 6, 7, 8 homes. They can turn one of those homes into, if the government don't want to build, they can take one of those homes and turn it into something. Or the government can give some of those buildings that they have no use for, right? Those multiple use buildings. Give it to NGOs that are waiting to establish. You have individual. We gave the government a really great proposal that we put together for this program. We were going through USAID, to help establish Liberia's first homeless shelter, where it was going to be based on Marshall hurricane of need, where we're going to have provide shelter, where we're going to be able to provide counseling services, right? Where we do an intake, to identify what the individual needs are, right? Identify what kind of mental health challenges that they're facing, provide those services, and then be able to provide, a little skill training. Doesn't have to be in computer. It can be masonry. It could be carpentry. It could be cooking, a culinary art. It could be sewing, something, so that these individuals, they come from the drugs treatment, they come from the mental health counseling. Now you're putting them into job skill. So when they come out of that institution, they become productive people. Not only have you helped them to deal with their drugs addiction, not only have you helped to stabilize their mental health, but you have also provided a skill set that they can now use either on their own, or they can work for somebody, or they can create opportunity for themselves. So those are the business steps for any country who is willing to seriously deal with drug addiction among a youth. If you're not doing that, I think everything else, I don't know what it is.
I agree with you 100%, man. And Jiva, I mean, hopefully someone is listening, and we ourselves, these are things that we need to put together. I know our hands are tied, but again, like you said, the government, and this is not even unique to Liberia, because the truth is, and it brings me to ask the question that now I'm not expecting a response from you, but when with African government, realize that addiction is not a crime, because these petty users are the ones that are, the victims, But the truth is, this is way beyond what we are doing to these petty users, because the truth is, this is a symptom of a system that actually failed its people, because it is the very government, like you said, that is responsible. Because if we cannot build institutions to rehabilitate these people, to get them off the street. And while we attack or tackle the sources, because the drug is coming from, you know what I mean, the ports, all these different ports of entries and borders, you know what I mean, entry points. I was talking to someone, I don't have the stats, but it was telling me Liberia has almost 140 some more border entry points. Only 23 have been protected. So what's happening with the rest? So the government, we're spending time, on things that are unnecessary, and when the very people are, our especially our youth, they are our greatest resources. So until our people can be educated, those who are we have placed in high place, until they can come to terms to understand that, I think we'll continue to wallow in this situation. So it's a big fight. It's a big fight. I have a few more questions, but I know we're running out of time. I don't want to, what I mean, this thing can go on and on and on because this drug situation is just it's so big that we can have the conversation probably all year round. And my last question to you, Jiba, why is it that the prisoners uh, or prisons are filled with petty users? Why the big hands, who are in the boardrooms, they occupy these ballrooms may be occupied by the real profiteers of this poison that they're bringing into the country. Nobody bothers them. They ride in big cars. Some of them they have connect with government officials. Some of them they're the very government officials. But one would say, "My man, where are you getting your information from?" So I mean, the country, the situation is toxic, and but yes, I'll
Yeah,
yield.
I mean, in America, there's a saying that whenever you see for every big crime entity or for every big illegal business that's going on, I'm talking about multi-million or billion-dollar industry. There's a rich white man behind it. A rich white man behind it. For Liberia case, for every big corrupt entity going on like that, whether it's the drugs or whether it's some huge illegal stuff, there's a government official hand behind it.
Like that. True. True.
So of course they masquerade in the name of law and order and justice by targeting the poor and the weak because they don't have the supporter behind them. They're easy to vilify them. It's easy to demonize them. The poor people. It's easy because they don't have nothing. By virtue of their poorness, the rest of society already consider them as a threat, just because the person don't have, the opportunity that has been taken away from them, stolen away from them. Because if we didn't have a bunch of corrupt officials who continue to, perpetrate imaginary demon in the minds of the people, right? If we don't have these people, the rampant corrupt people, resources would have been used in programs that would have helped to elevate these youth so that the drugs addiction we're talking about, we wouldn't even be talking about this in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these guys take advantage of their status. So yeah, you ramped up few, a petty user and display them on camera, and maybe the guy that sell to them, you bring that guy up, and boom, it looked like law enforcement are working. It looked like government is working. But behind the curtain, the real people been sitting there, untouched. You know, this is not just unique to Liberia, though. This is also probably even here in America and many part of the world. You know, but let's focus on Liberia. The reason
Yeah.
I worry about Liberia because we don't have the resources to deal with the problem. So let's not exacerbate the problem because when the problem gets exacerbated, it get overblown, it get overwhelmed. We don't already have resources for so many other things that we're supposed to be doing in terms of education, in terms of hospital, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of water, electricity, the basic human need. We don't have the resources, but we're struggling. So now, if we take our eyes off this drugs addiction and we become really overwhelmed with it, where's the resources coming from to treat that other pandemic that we're going to be dealing with?
But Gina, it's ironic that
Worry me.
just around the same time they're talking about this drug addiction, hookah, which is that vapor, is being banned in Liberia. So if hookah has been banned, it's much more easier to say, what I mean, drug is banned. So we see, in other words, they're saying that drug is banned, but how is it that the proliferation of drug is even immense in the country? But we're running out of time. It's a pleasure to have you on the show as always. We'll have you come back again, Jiba. We can talk about this over and over. 100% right. I mean, lack of resources, maybe one of the major problems. But the first thing is the very human resources. We don't have loyalty. Patriotism is far from the truth. We don't have people who are selfless, who want to really see the country. And so if we have that type of leadership, people who are there for the country, definitely. Even if we do not completely eradicate drug, we probably will be able to minimize drug to a point where, we'll have more protective individuals. Because the fear here is on a very serious level. What happens 20 years from now if we're killing all of our youth?
We're going.
Look at now. This is about 2029 coming. Look at what are the choices that we have? Very limited choices. A CDC, I guess their, what you call it, headquarters was being demolished. And yesterday they have mass gathering again. They have all this stuff. We where are the future leaders of this country? What are we doing to ourselves? It's a question that I always ask. So on that note, Jiva, I'll give you the opportunity to give us your closing remark, and then we'll close this thing, and then hopefully we'll come back. Maybe we can have Nat come, and we can have some other guys. I know this guy also he talks about drug addiction and things like that. I think he called him, what's his name? Conan or something like that. I'm trying to see if we can get him to also come, because this can be an ongoing discussion.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, again, always, thank you for bringing out this very important topic. I think it's a topic that we need to keep on the forefront of our, other discussion, because it have a lasting impact, an impact that is not easy to easily solve. Because I know, a wealthy country like America still struggle, with drug addictions and, rehabilitation, mental health, treatment, and all that stuff. They have all the resources, but yet they still struggle with that. So imagine a country like us that don't have it. So that really worries me a lot. So prevention is always better than cure. Right now, if the government can really focus itself on taking the first initial steps, to dealing with this problem, I think that would be, a way to go, which is strengthening the borders, strengthening customs, strengthening the port of entrance, putting in logistics and, and technology that help to deter detect, the importation of drugs, and of course coming out with punitive measure that is, strenuous, that is strong, that is not just, selective, So if we can do that, then at least we can be able to set an example to anyone who perceive drugs as an easy way to make money off the Liberian people, or drugs as a way of, making wealth. You will think twice, But if we can put those things in place, then of course, we continue to spin, go in the tail spin, and not finding the right answer or the resolution to help our young people and help our country as large. So again, thanks for the show, and I will be waiting, to continue this conversation whenever you decide to bring this back into the forefront.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Gebah S. Kamara. I want to thank you all for viewing. Gebah, we want to thank you for your appearance again, for always coming to grace us with your knowledge and your background. I want to say to every listener tonight, reflect, speak, act. Silence is complicity, and our silence is killing us. It's been the We Too Are Liberians Movement podcast. I'm your host, again, Ayiti Williams, and I will not stop until you rise again. Because we are not statistics, we are the seeds of redemption and Africa's redemption. So to speak, say no to drugs, say yes to life. Good night and rise strong. Thank you very much for following us. This has been the We Too Are Liberians Movement. I look forward to seeing you guys here on the show next week. Gebah, you have a pleasant night. God bless, and I'll talk to you later.
You do the same, brother. Take care.
It's all we want to live. Give me food, give me clothes, give me love, and give me shelter.